This is Simply Safety version 6 Injuries module movie for the Safety Manager. By the end of this movie you should be able to add, edit, and delete injuries, state the rules of historical injury data, explain the tabs in the Injuries module, track multiple periods of time loss, track multiple periods of restricted work, filter for injury data, export data to Microsoft Excel, create an injury analysis report, graph injuries, create an injury claim, print first report of injury, print injury reports, and print OSHA log reports. In this movie we're going to cover the use of the Injuries module. Let's start with Add, Edit, and Delete. Injuries are always added through the Add Injury module, covered by a separate movie. Keep in mind that you may have separate security restrictions set on add injury, injuries, and claims. Typically, first aid people would be allowed to add injuries as well as the safety manager. However, security may be restricted to the Injuries module just to the safety manager, and the Claims module to the safety manager and possibly HR. The Add Injury module is a one-way entry module. I'm going to click on Injuries and see a list of our injuries. These are all demonstration injuries. There's no real information here in this demo database. Notice the silver tab on the left under the record row. To edit an injury, highlight that silver tab, then click the Edit button in the lower right corner of the screen. Alternately, just double-click on any record to open the Edit record. To delete an injury, highlight the silver tab on the left end of the row and press the Delete key on the keyboard. A warning message will come up. Note that it's unusual to delete an injury because injuries form historical records. You may delete an injury if it was just put in for test purposes. Notice that an injury may have a related claim. I'm looking at the bottom record on this list, and as you can see in the claims box there's a check for a claim. So this particular injury has a claim. So if I highlight the silver tab, press the Delete key on the keyboard, I'll get a warning that if I delete this injury I'm going to delete the related claim record. Again, it would be very unusual to do this. So in summary, injuries can be deleted by highlighting the silver tab on the left end of the row, then pressing the Delete key on the keyboard and acknowledging the warning. However, it is unusual to delete injuries. In the Injuries module, I've just clicked on the Incomplete radio button to filter down to all the incomplete injuries. They're color-coded into pink. The first injury I've just added a few minutes ago in the Add Injury movie. So I'm going to double-click on that to open and edit it. Typically, once this injury has been added, perhaps by a first aid person, the safety manager would then take over at this point to conduct an investigation if warranted. So the information as added by the first aid attendant is visible on this form. I'd like to point out that the first aid attendant, when that person entered it, selected a region and a site and a company and a person. Now the employee is no longer editable. We can't select another person because this was the injured person. We can, however, select another company and, if necessary, another region and a site. This region and site is not directly related to the person's region and site in the People module, but is rather the region and the site where the incident occurred. Since the incident module forms a historical record, should in the future the region or the site names be changed or deleted from the Setup module, this same region and site would remain in the Injuries module as well as the Damages module, as these are historical tables. While this form looks similar to the Add Injury form, there are some differences, quite a few differences, and let's just have a look at those. Down at the bottom of this form there's some quick reports. Also some buttons to email details on this particular injury to anyone, to print it out, or to attach documents. You might want to attach your accident investigation here. Also at the bottom of the screen, right in the middle, there's a checkbox for insurance claim. This is a very important checkbox because if this injury becomes a claim, if you check this checkbox, it will create a record in the Claims module. Let's go up to the top of the screen on the right hand side. We still have our OSHA recordable checkbox for U.S. companies, although it is used by some Canadian companies as well to print out OSHA log reports because it's valuable information. Also, new on this form is a actual or potential radio buttons. This defaults to actual, indicating that this was an actual incident. If you'd enter a near miss, you may select potential for a potential incident. To the right of that is an incident severity rating drop-down and a matrix which allows you to pick an incident severity rating. Now here's a tip. I'm going to select potential, and I've selected a high severity rating, major or catastrophic. Just note that in the reports on the browse screen, I won't select it right now, but there's a report in this browse screen for high potential incidents. The information on the right side of the screen below the ISR rating is what was filled in by the first aid attendant. You may want to further fill in that information. This record is marked as pink for incomplete. Once you're complete with your accident investigation and this injury is finished, then you'd want to check this complete checkbox. If I do that, it's going to fill in the date. At that point, the pink coloring on the browse screen will turn to green. The contacts button on the lower right of the form is just a quick list of emergency contacts that you can add. They're simply used for convenience. The Add Action button is to quickly add a corrective action item that's attached to this injury. That corrective action would then show up in the Actions tab. Okay, the system tracks a injury number, and that's located up in the upper right corner of the screen where it says report number 60. For demonstration purposes, I've changed this incident type from first aid to a lost time injury. Let's go through the tabs at the top of this form and see what they do. What happened will contain information that was entered by the first aid entry person and contains additional optional fields such as investigated by and checkboxes. Most of these checkboxes will appear on the detailed incident report. The Supervisor tab contains some fields of potential interest for the supervisor and a place if the police were attending to record information on the police file. The Cause tab includes drop-down fields that can be used to help identify the cause of the accident, primary, secondary, root cause. Again, if you double-click on these fields, if you have the proper permissions, those fields will open and you can add, edit, and delete the entries in these drop-down boxes. When you select a cause of any type, an Add Action button will appear beside it, which allows you, at your option, to click on it and immediately add a corrective action. There's a text form on the right side of the screen for an explanation of the cause of the accident. The Prevention tab includes two large fields for text explanations of the preventive measures. If there was healthcare involved in this incident, you can use the Healthcare tab to record details. If there was a vehicle involved in this injury, and if that vehicle is in the Vehicle Equipment module, you can use this drop-down to select that vehicle and get details on it. There's fields on the lower left to record information on the driver and the insurance company, and a text field on the right to describe damage. I've just clicked on the Time Loss OSHA tab. This tab is really doing three things. On the left column, there's a form here for tracking one or multiple periods of time loss. Below that, another subform for tracking one or multiple periods of restricted work. Now, the information from these two forms also feeds into the OSHA Log 300A report used by U.S. companies. However, it's been left on this form for all kinds of companies, including Canadian or other companies, because it's useful information, and this form may be of value to them as well. To record a period of time loss for our injured worker, just click on the Add button and fill in the form. Since we already have a period of time loss, I'm just going to double click on it to open it up. Here's his off work date, his off work time, his expected return date. Notice that this is a canary yellow field, so this feeds into the Simply Alert expiry tracking system. So you can get a report on when your employees are expected to return to work. This is his actual return to work date and time. If we click this button, It shows us he was away work for 5 days, and estimated work days based on a 40-hour week is 4. The periods of restricted work form works the same way. I'm just going to double click on the first one. The information is recorded in a similar manner, and this allows you to record multiple periods of time loss and restricted work. I just clicked on the Actions tab. Currently there's no actions listed here, so there's no actions related to this particular injury. Now if we go back to the Cause tab, we notice that every time we pick a cause, a plus action button jumps up, which allows us to quickly add a corrective action there. I've not done so, so I'm just going to go back to the Actions tab, go to the bottom of the screen, and click on the Add Action button. This pre-fills in some of the information on the corrective actions form, including the region, the site, the date. We need to fill in a target due date. I give my man, a week and a half or so to do that. The action type is already pre-filled in as injury, and we just pick from these drop downs. Again, if you have security permissions, you can double click and add, edit, or delete. This is requested by myself, and it's going to be issued to Douglas. If that checkbox is checked, if Douglas has an email address, he'll be immediately emailed in this work order. For demonstration purposes, I'm not going to want to do that. If I have a reference number, I can put it in here. If there's a toolbox group involved, I can pick it here. And toolbox group, this is a customizable label, so this could be called people group or work group in your version of the program. This is an optional field. It just allows you in the end to produce statistics on corrective action items by different groups. The incident location was already inserted from the injury, and if we want, these are optional, we can set a priority and a status, and then fill in the issue on the right. You can fill in text on the right side of the screen for an issue description and discussion and the action needed. Then if you want, you can print a work order right here using this print icon on the lower left side of the screen. If you want this particular action item to show up in your safety minutes, check this checkbox. Then click Save. I've just recorded my corrective action item, and now it shows up under the Actions tab. It's color-coded pink because it's incomplete. Since I've saved my corrective action and I've reopened this incident, I now have a red bar under the Actions tab indicating that there's an incomplete action attached to this injury. If I click on it, I can complete the corrective action from this form by simply filling out the corrective action comments and then marking it complete by checking the complete checkbox at the bottom of the form. Then saving. When I reopen the incident, the red bar is gone and the action is now marked as complete. Back on the First Aid or the Main tab, when I'm satisfied that all the actions are completed and the investigation is completed, I have all my cause and prevention under control, then I can mark this entire incident as complete and save it, at which time the pink color coding for incomplete turns to cyan green for complete. We're now back on the Injuries browse screen. Let's look at the Injuries filter in the upper left corner, the first blue button. This is quite an extensive filter with 2 tabs on it, the first for incidents, the second for OSHA reportable reports. Let's look at the Incidents tab. The purpose of the filter is allow you to sort down your injuries into selective categories. Let's say that we just wanted to look at incidents for engineers. I'd select engineers and job title and click on OK. That narrows this down to 3 incidents for engineers. Now keep in mind that standard reports are at the top of the screen. When you filter down like this and then you pick a report, the report is going to print just on what's filtered down on the screen. To remove that filter and return to all information, click on the second filter with the red X on top of it. So using this filter, you can slice and dice your information by many different categories. Let's say I just wanted to look at potential incidents. I just select the potential radio button, then click on OK, and that narrows us down to 5 potential incidents. Again, if I pick my reports, that's only going to print what's shown on the screen at the time. Next, let's look at how to print OSHA log reports. OSHA log reports are located in the Reports drop-down at the top left of the screen. Notice just to the right of this drop-down, there's a text hint. Use the filter OSHA log reportable tab on the far left before selecting and printing OSHA recordable reports. So we're going to go to the filter on the very left, and we're going to select the second tab over, OSHA reportable. Now there's two sides to this filter. To print OSHA log reports, you'd select on the left side, or if you want a filter to view OSHA recordable incidents, you'd select the right side. So I'm going to select days away from work on the right hand side, click OK, and that filters us down to 2 incidents. Note that our OSHA recordable checkbox is filled in. To remove the filter, click on the red X. Okay, to print a OSHA log report, we'd select the year. I'll leave it at 2009, and if we want, we can select the region and site and reporting company. I'm just going to leave it at 2009. Click OK. Filters down to 4 incidents in 2009, all with the OSHA recordable checkbox on. So if I now select my OSHA log reports, that will generate the reports. Still on the browse screen, let's look at 2 features at the bottom of the screen under buttons. First is called Excel. If I click on the Excel button, this will immediately export what's on the screen to an Excel spreadsheet. Notice that the version of Excel needs to be set up by the Safety Manager in the Setup module on the Preferences tab. The Analysis button performs a quick analysis by total categories of issues, such as injury area, injury type, etc. It's simply counting up the numbers of these issues in each category based on if this is blank for all regions, all companies, and all sites, and in this date range. If I click Calculate, it recalculates. There's a Print button at the bottom to print a report. This helps you to analyze where your injuries are coming from, what types they are, what the primary and root causes are, etc. Let's look at some of the reports available in the Reports drop-down. The standard report is right at the top of the screen. Remember, it's going to print for whatever's on the screen at the time. To escape this report, go to the Print Preview, click the Close button. The reports you would most often use would probably be standard or standard redacted. Redacted is the standard report with privacy information blanked out. Another very useful report is Region Site Report, which splits the information up by region and site. The OSHA log reports are for U.S. companies. Keep in mind that for 2 out of 3 of these reports you must filter first before you can print them. For Excel is to export to Excel. The rest of these are specialized reports, and the 2 bottom reports are custom reports, and you can read the instructions on the screen as to how to use those reports. So let's look at how to create an injury claim out of an injury. So I'm going to go to my record for Bob that I changed to lost time. I'll open it up to edit it, and at the bottom of the screen I'm going to click on this important checkbox called Insurance Claim, then click Save. I've just opened up the Claims module, and after clicking on the Insurance Claim checkbox in Injuries, I now have a claim for Bob for his lost time injury. So I'm going to double click to open up and edit this claim. Many different tabs across the top which allows you to track claim information. I'm going to draw your attention down to the bottom left of this form under Reports, and here there's a number of First Report of Injuries forms. So I'm going to pick British Columbia WCB Form 7, and that brings up the WorkSafe BC form. Now keep in mind that these forms are filled out about 40 to 50%. They're not completely filled out. You do have to fill some of them out with a pen and ink. A description of injuries wouldn't be complete without graphs, so I'll show you just very briefly because we'll cover this in a separate movie. In the Incidents module, just roll your mouse down to Graphs and Stats. and I'm going to pick Power Graphs. That opens up the Power Graphing module, and by default we have a graph selected for all injuries grouped by month. Type is a bar chart from this date range to this date range. To create the graph, we just click on this Create Graph button. I've just changed this graph to group by company. I'll change it to group by job title. And again, the quickest way to learn the graphing module is just to go into it and start to use it. It is a full-featured graphing module. You can change these graphs to look just about any way you want them to look. Let me draw your attention to the filters at the bottom of the screen of the graphing module. By default, these filters are all turned on. That means it's drawing information from all of these different categories. Let's pick on companies to start with. Let's say I don't want to graph by all companies. I just want to look at KnowledgeWare Communications Company. So I select KnowledgeWare and I click Create Graph, and that changes our graphs. Now we're only looking at information from KnowledgeWare. So keep in mind that while your main data is located in the Injuries module, you can get many different views of it in the Simple Graphs and Power Graphing modules. Okay, we're back into the Injuries module for one last tip. I'm looking at the lost time injury for Bob. I'm going to open it up. Just want to draw your attention at the bottom of the screen. Insurance claim is checked. That means an insurance claim has been created in the Claims module. Also look at the Complete checkbox over here to the right. Now this Complete checkbox, so the Complete checkbox in Injuries and for the related claim are the same Complete checkbox. I don't know if I've explained that very well, but if you check this Complete in Injuries, it will check it as complete in Injuries but also in the Claims module. The reverse to that, if you're in the Claims module and you check the claim as complete, it will also check the injury off as complete in the Injury module. So just keep in mind that the Complete checkbox in Injuries and Claims is the same checkbox, and it will set both the injury and the claim both complete or incomplete. Here's what we've covered in this movie: adding, editing, and deleting injuries, historical data rules, the tabs in the Injuries module, tracking multiple periods of time loss, tracking multiple periods of restricted work, filtering for injury data, exporting data to Microsoft Excel, creating an injury analysis report, graphing injuries, creating an injury claim, printing first report of injury, printing injury reports, printing OSHA log reports.